Hi guys, so today I wanted to talk about some recommendations for Christian nonfiction. Basically, they're just like to just encourage you in your faith and teach you new things, and they're just always so encouraging. So I wanted to recommend some of my favorite ones, and then I do have some that I've never read but I do plan to read this year, so I wanted to show them. To start off with, I have Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. This book will blow your mind. Now, you can read this if you're not a Christian. I will tell you if some of them are more geared towards Christians. This one, anyone can read it because it's basically C.S. Lewis explaining what Christians believe and why we believe it. So it's fascinating, and he is just so smart. He talks about like morality and like wrong and right and where we get our morals from, and then different like subcategories of Christianity, I guess, like faith and peace and pride and those kind of things. So I highly recommend this. It is kind of like academic, so sometimes it's hard to understand what he's saying because his sentences are so complicated sometimes, but I highly recommend it. Take your time, grab a pencil and underline these things because it's so fascinating. And it really just encouraged me in my faith because it kind of like showed me that what I believe does make sense too. So that's really cool. Okay, the next one is Jesus is Greater Than Religion by Jefferson Bethke. Now, I watch him on YouTube. I will link his channel below actually because he makes great videos. He's amazing. He made the YouTube video Jesus is Greater Than Religion, or no, it's called Why I Hate Religion But Love Jesus. I think that's what it's called. And he wrote a book based on that video pretty much. It's so good. Like, his thing is that Jesus is who we should be seeking and not like looking good. Like, as Christians, we tend to want to look good and do all the right things so that God will accept us, but that's not who God is. He loves us just because. There's nothing that we do that makes him love us. He just loves us. So he talks a lot about that. He talks about like just how we should stop fearing sin, and like it's just fascinating. So with this book, I think you kind of do have to be a Christian to kind of understand some of the things that he talks about, but he does have a bit of his testimony in this book too, so I think that's worth a read as well if you're not a Christian. And then his second book that just came out last November, I think, It's Not What You Think. This was such a good book. I've tabbed it. So for this one, I think you do need to be a Christian to really get a lot out of it. But he just talks about so many issues that Christians struggle with, and he's just really smart and definitely has God's hand on him, and I think it's great. So yeah, his two books are really awesome. Okay, next I have A Wild Grace by Max Lucado. This was such a good book. I mean, you don't have to be a Christian to read this, but if you were a Christian already, you'd get more out of this. But basically, he's talking about how it's really hard for people in general to accept God's grace because we always think that we have to earn his favor when really we don't. So he just talks about like all of the things that we struggle with once again, and I loved it. It was exactly what I needed, and I highly recommend this book. It was really good. Next, I have one that's geared more towards women. It's called When God Pursues a Woman's Heart by Cindy McMenamin. This book is so good, dude. I cried so much reading this. It's basically explaining God's heart for women. So if you're a woman, you don't have to be a Christian to read this. Basically, it just talks about how much God loves you and how all of your value comes from him and not someone else. So I loved this. I highly recommend it to all girls. It's really good. Next, I have one that's kind of more for younger people, I think. It's called Escaping the Vampire by Kimberly Powers. I read this when I was a teenager, and this came out when Twilight was really big. As you can see, it kind of looks like Twilight. But this is basically talking about how, like, why teen girls got so obsessed with vampires and having a vampire boyfriend and stuff like that, and how once again we need to get our value from God and not from a story about a vampire. So yeah, she talks a lot about issues like that, so it very much like is geared towards a younger audience, but I really loved it. She said some great things in here, so I would recommend that one too. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the ones that I haven't read yet, but I would recommend them because they look really awesome and I'm excited to read them. So the one I'm currently reading is Imagine Meeting Him by Robert Rasmussen, and I really am liking this. So this guy is taking different encounters with Jesus from the Bible and writing about them. So like just every story in the Bible where someone met Jesus, he's putting it into like a little narration, and then it brings about a lot of like issues and just faith things that like, what do you actually believe, and like the real character of Jesus comes out and stuff. So I'm loving it. I am not very far through, but this is what I read at night because it's just like really interesting, and the stories are quite short, so it's not really intimidating or anything. And he speaks very conversationally, so it's really easy to understand. So I would recommend this book. Deepening Your Conversation with God by Ben Patterson, and then it says Learning to Love to Pray. I can't wait to read this. I'm thinking it's like going to talk about prayer and how prayer is so powerful to get you closer to God. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. So Deepening Your Conversation with God. Next is Understanding Jesus by Joe Amaro. So the first opening is, have you ever wondered who Jesus really was? So this is just like looking at Jesus's life from the Bible and just putting together like what kind of person Jesus was. So I'm really looking forward to reading that. And then I've got The Irresistible Revolution. I know this one's really popular, so some of you might know it. It is by Shane Claiborne, and I'm so excited to start this. I think it's basically encourage you and motivate you to be bold with your faith and start a revolution for God, pretty much. So I'm so excited to read that. And then the last one is Love Does by Bob Goff. I follow him on Twitter and he is so funny and he's really cool. So you should go follow him on Twitter. But I think it's basically, this book is about God's love for you and how it changes your life. So yeah, okay, those are all the books. I hope you guys enjoyed. I am a Christian, so it will come out on this channel because I read stuff that is about God and stuff. So I'm going to talk about that. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. But if you have any questions, definitely comment below. I would love to chat with you. And yeah, let's just, you know, keep it nice. These are just some nice books. If you don't like them, you don't have to read them. And I will not be, you know, pushing my faith on anyone, but I am here if you ever want to ask a question or just make a comment. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.